Hello friends and welcome to Chadowfax Games. I am doing something different today in that I am not playing a video game. I've always intended this channel to be about gaming in general, not limited to just video games. And a step in that direction is today I am playing Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Now there are several different board games under this title. They're all the same game, they're just different cases inside them. This is a set of mysteries that you can solve. It's a game for 1 to 8 players. The box I got is The Thames Murders and Other Cases. This is the first one. It was initially released as just Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. This is kind of a republish of that first one after they've done more cases and more boxes after this. So I am starting with the first one. It's just republished under The Thames Murders and Other Cases. So how this game works is you have a case book that lays out the mystery for you. Then you follow leads. And you follow leads by consulting your London directory, the newspaper, and regular contacts that Sherlock Holmes has that are on the back of the instruction manual. You have this nice map of London to give you different locations so you can research addresses. You can look up people's names in the London directory by alphabetical order. You can also look up different types of businesses and such. So if you basically want to say, well, I need to talk to a gunsmith, you can actually look up gunsmiths in the directory and see if there's one that's related to the case. I'm going to put that box lid aside for now. So once you get to the end of the case, you consult Sherlock Holmes for the solutions. Before you do that, you answer 2 series of questions about the case. One is directly related to whatever the mystery is, and other is additional information you might have found along the way. Each question you get right scores you points, and then you compare the number of leads you followed to Sherlock Holmes, and then you deduct points if you followed more leads than him, and you add points if you followed less leads than him. Now, I did try to record this game previously, so I've actually already done the first case. I didn't do a very good job of making it entertaining, and I often left out vital information that I was basing my conclusions on. And to add further insult to injury, basically I scored a negative score when I totaled it up because Sherlock Holmes solved the case in 4 leads. I followed 15 total leads, and I only answered 2 of the main mystery questions, and I think I got a couple of the bonus questions. So overall, didn't do well. Also, the recording didn't go well, so we're going again from the second case. With the second case, you need to be able to consult not just one newspaper, but the previous case's newspaper and the newspaper from the date of your current case, because there may be information hidden in the previous newspapers. So I've got 2 newspapers here to consult. I've got my directory, and I've got my casebook for the second case here. So the first case was the munitions magnet, in which you try to solve the murder of basically a munitions, the president of a munitions company who got murdered. So I don't know if that will play into this. If it does, I will try to summarize what I had learned from that first case. The second case is the Tin Soldier. So basically, I'm going to read through the opening of this case, and then I'll figure out what leads I need to follow. I have a pen and a notepad here to take notes, and let's get going. Alright, just really quickly to set the scene for each of these cases. We, as the players, are members of the Baker Street Irregulars, which are kind of Sherlock Holmes' network of informants. We report to, I believe, Wiggins is his name. Wiggins is the leader of the Baker Street Irregulars, and basically we get sent out by Sherlock Holmes to help him solve the mystery, and our goal is to solve it before he does. Alright, so I'm going to read the briefing for this case, and here we go. We are at 221B Baker Street, celebrating the conclusion of our previous case, that would be the munitions magnet, when we hear a clamor in the street below, followed by the ringing of the front doorbell, and then the sound of heavy footfalls on the stairs. It seems as if our moment of triumph is to be but short-lived. Come in, Lestrade. Lestrade timidly peeks in, his face betraying surprise at being recognized before he is seen. "Really, Holmes," exclaims Watson. "I suppose you will tell us that Lestrade rings doorbells in a most distinctive way and that you would recognize his footsteps anywhere." "No, my dear Watson, not at all," Holmes chuckles. "But since the trip from the front door to ours was made in seconds and was unaccompanied by a warning screech from Mrs. Hudson, it must be presumed she knew the caller. Who else would be in such a hurry and gain immediate entry but Inspector Lestrade with some pressing and professional matter? Besides, well at the window a few moments ago, I glimpsed the inspector's carriage turning onto Baker Street. Inspector, now that you have regained your breath, how can we be of service to you?" Lestrade plops down in a chair and gasps out, "General Farnsworth Armistead, one of the 6 surviving Waterloo Tontine ticket holders, has been murdered." "Waterloo Tontine?" asks Watson. "A lottery of sorts. In 1815, the Tontine was set up to aid the veterans of the Battle of Waterloo, Wellington's victory over Napoleon. For £1, one bought a ticket in the name of some young relative. Longevity is paramount to winning. The ticket proceeds amount to over £1 million, half of which went immediately to veterans and their families for medical and hardship expenses. The remainder went into an account at the Bank of England, where it has been collecting interest all these years. The sole surviving ticket holder will claim that prize." "A king's ransom, certainly," exclaims Watson. "Who are the surviving ticket holders?" "The oldest is Captain Robert Jurgens, 82. Then Anita and Claire Thomas, twins, 80 years old. William Rowland, age 79. Peter Dudley, 77. General Armstead was the youngest at 74. The Times is sponsoring some big to-do involving the Tontine survivors on the 18th, says Holmes. "That's right. A Waterloo anniversary banquet at the Langham Hotel." "Why is the name Armstead familiar?" "Perhaps, Watson, you are thinking of the General's book, Treasure of the Conquerors," says Holmes. "He was a noted art collector, I believe." "Indeed he was, Mr. Holmes," says Lestrade. "He was interested in valuables, which at one time belonged to famous military men. The book traced the history of various objects and how they passed from collector to collector. Quite a sensation it was, if you know what I mean. At the time of his death, he was working on a revised edition for his publisher, Norgate and Company. It was to contain an entirely new chapter on a fabulous diamond called the Polar Star, which at one point belonged to Joseph Bonaparte, Napoleon's brother. The general had new information which traced the gem to its present owner. What do you think, Holmes?" "I think, Inspector, that you should tell us the circumstances of the general's death," says Holmes. At 10 o'clock this morning, the general's valet and former batman, David Sennett, admitted a caller to the general's study. The caller was an elderly gentleman, hunched over his cane with a French accent unknown to Sennett. It was all very unusual in that the general never sees anyone in the morning while he is at work. But the gentleman insisted that if the general would read a letter, he would be the exception to the proven rule. And so it was. Sennett took the letter to the general, who went very pale when he read it. He told Sennett to let the man in. Sensing something amiss, Sennett dawdled in the area of the study for the next 15 minutes or so. Suddenly he heard the distinct sound of swordplay. He then tried to enter the study but found the door securely locked. As he attempted to force it, he heard the crash of breaking glass. He gave it up and raced to the kitchen and out the back door to enter the study from the garden. The caller had quite vanished by the time he arrived, and the general was leaning against a display case of military miniatures, the shattered top of which accounted for the broken glass. Before Sennett could assist him, he dropped a rapier from his hand and fell over dead. "I take it," asks Holmes, "that the letter that so upset the general is nowhere to be found." "Correct, Mr. Holmes." "Well, Inspector, we shall put our brains and our feet to the task." "Thank you, Mr. Holmes." So that's all we get. So I'm gonna look in the newspaper because there was literally, the Times was literally mentioned. There's a big to-do involving Tontine survivors. So reading the newspaper doesn't count as following a lead. Alright, so it's right here under miscellaneous. 73rd Waterloo anniversary. The Times is pleased to announce a dinner on the occasion of the 73rd anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo, June 18th, at the Langham Hotel. Surviving participants in the Waterloo Tontine will be guests of honor. Further information is available at the Langham Hotel or the Times office. So, Langham Hotel and Times office might be leads to follow. I don't think it will be necessary unless we get more information pointing us that way. So, I need to figure out what lead I want to follow, and so I'm just going to think it over for a bit as I reread that. The thing I think to do is go to the crime scene, which would be where General Armstead lives, because it happened in his study. So I need to go to the London directory and look up Armstead. So I'm given an address, which will both be an entry in the casebook as well as a location on the map here. So we can see where everything is laid out on the map, and we can use this travel scale, which isn't in distance but in travel time. We can use that to check alibis if a suspect may have traveled from one location to another. We can use this travel scale. So the full scale is 15 minutes, so a third of it is 5 minutes. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to General Farnsworth Armstead, which is in 27 Northwest. So Northwest is this quadrant, and that's location 27. Which is right here. And quadrant is really the wrong word because it's divided into 5 areas, not 4. So I'm going to note that down as I'm noting down 27 Northwest because we're allowed to go back to any leads we followed previously without it counting as following a lead, and if I note each location, I'll know the number of leads I followed. So Um, let's go to, so then I go to my casebook and I go to 27 Northwest. And I read that entry. Okay, and we have a nice long entry here which we'll need to cross-check with the previous information. So basically to see if there's anything that doesn't line up from what we've already learned, and if we learn anything new, any important clues. So 27 Northwest says, at the Armstead home, we find that the police have cordoned off the premises, and it is only after mentioning Inspector Lestrade's name in a loud and indignant tone that we are able to gain admittance. We pass into a large foyer which houses some of the general's art collection. On one pedestal is an alabaster vase. A card states that it belonged to Alexander the Great, given to him in tribute by an Egyptian prince. In a glass-enclosed niche is a jade necklace once owned by Augustus Caesar's wife, Livia. In all, there are some 15 objects in the foyer, none of which appears to have been disturbed. So his collection is untouched, basically, so this may not be a robbery. At the study door, we are met by the general's valet and former Batman, David Sennett. We judge him to be the general's contemporary, that is, in his 70s, more by his white hair and weathered face than by any deterioration of his physique. He is, in fact, slim and athletically built. One has no problem imagining that his uniform of 40 years ago still fits him perfectly. Ramrod stiff, only his eyes betray any emotion, and they are quite red as if from weeping. He readily agrees to conduct us on a tour of the premises. The study is a very large room devoid of furniture, save for the desk at the opposite end of the room. To our right, between two bookcases, is a glass-enclosed display, at the top of which has been shattered. In the glass case is a diorama of some 200 military figurines. Hanging on the wall above are flags, sabers, and a hussar's police, and other military equipment. The general called this his Waterloo Wall, explains Sennett. These are mementos of that great battle, and of course, the Tontine ticket. The ticket, a large certificate really, is framed and hanging about eye level among the other paraphernalia. This is where I found the general, says Sennett, leaning over the diorama. He must have smashed the glass with the pommel of his rapier. What does the diorama represent? It is a depiction of the last great British charge which swept the French from the field at Waterloo. The Iron Duke, as the Duke of Wellington was called, is waving his hat to signal the advance. Here now. Sennett points to the figure representing Wellington. While all the other figures are advancing toward the viewer, the figure of Wellington is turned around in the opposite direction, that is to say, facing the wall. How strange, says Sennett. He is about to set it right when we caution him that nothing in the room should be touched until the police investigation is completed. On the wall opposite the Waterloo Wall are hung two crossed cavalry pennants. Below them, at man's height, is a single rapier. There is a dust pattern on the wall which crosses it, indicating a missing twin. It was the rapier that the general had, explained Sennett. A chair, normally placed by the desk for the use of visitors, had been moved against the wall under the rapier. Faint footprints soiled the fabric of the seat. Several handwritten pages which represent the revisions of his book, Treasures of the Conquerors, are strewn on top of the general's desk. Sennett tells us that the general was working on it when the visitor arrived. These particular pages deal with the history of the gem, the Polar Star. It traces its ownership from Napoleon's brother up to a Russian, Count Rostov, who acquired it in the year 1872 and from whom it was stolen in 1887. Next to the manuscript is a letter from Pierre Maton. It simply states that he is prepared to divulge the name of the present owner of the gem for the agreed-upon fee. Information and money are to be traded at the Bridge House Hotel at 10 a.m. on the 12th. That is, I believe, the day after we are investigating. Also of interest is the notation in the General's appointment book for the day of the murder, 1 p.m., French Embassy. The General was to meet an old friend, Jean-Paul Girard, says Senate. Monsieur Girard was an instructor at the École Militaire when the General was sent to France in 48. Were you with the General in France? Oh yes, I've been with the General almost 45 years. Finally, there is a small framed photograph of a stern-looking woman. That's the late Mrs. Armstead, says Senate. We detect a note of hostility in Senate's tone and inquire about it. Well, sir, you might say that Mrs. Armstead and I never quite got on. You might say that Mrs. Armstead did not get on with anyone, including the Generals. Theirs was not a love match? No, sir. Lord Fitch was in danger of having a spinster daughter on his hands, and the General, well, sir, he saw it as a way of social and career advancement. It was an arrangement. Nothing more. But surely something between them must have developed. Why else would the General keep her picture on his desk? Actually, it was placed there to tweak Mrs. Armstead's brother, the present Lord Fitch. You see, a good deal of Mrs. Armstead's wealth, and so the General's, was in stock in various companies. Her brother also holds stock in those companies. Whether they liked it or not, and believe me, they did not, Lord Fitch and the General were in business together. Lord Fitch was to see the General this morning, but he never arrived. Normally the picture resides in the lower left-hand drawer. Going back to this morning, would you describe the color for us? He was a short, old man. He wore a black cape and carried a carpet bag. Oh, and he walked with a cane. He didn't give a name. No, he simply asked to see the General and presented a letter which he intimated that the General would want to see. You didn't see the contents of the letter? No, but the envelope was yellowed with age, and it was addressed in a very graceful hand to Captain Armstead, 12th Hussars, the General's old regiment. When he read it, he went very pale. Then in a subdued voice he asked me to admit the gentleman. When you finally got into the room through these garden doors, the study door was still locked, correct? Yes, that's right. The garden is surrounded by an 8-foot wall, and the only way into or out of the garden is through the house, correct? Yes, either through the kitchen door or through these doors. We thank him and leave. Alright, so I'm just gonna think about this a bit. Alright, so just to note something, the Kane, the unknown caller and murderer, is carrying has been mentioned twice. but only one rapier was used by the general, so I suspect that he was carrying a cane sword. Now, I don't know if we're treating Sennett as a suspect, but I mean, he's the only one that saw the caller, right? And he's reporting that he was told to show him in, that he was reporting the sound of a fight. He's reporting that the doors were locked and that he had to go around outside through the garden. So, if we're taking what Sennett says as truth, he couldn't have left through the study doors because the study doors were locked from the inside. And he couldn't have gone through the kitchen doors because that's the way Sennett went through. Sennett went around through the kitchen to the garden to the study. And the garden is surrounded by an 8-foot wall. So it's unlikely that an old man is able to climb the wall. And any other way Sennett would have seen him, Sennett would have run into him through the kitchen, and the doors couldn't have been locked. So, it's possible, it's just possible, Sennett is lying and Sennett is the murderer, which is the one world I'm building in my head right now. The second world is that this is a young man disguised as an old man who climbed over the garden wall. Another possibility is Sennett is an accomplice to the actual murderer and lets him out and locks the doors behind him. So this isn't just a basic theft because there's a lot of valuable artifacts that are just left untouched. So it might... The letter was very old. The envelope was yellowed with age, and it was addressed in a very graceful hand to Captain Armstead, 12th Hoosiers. So it was written before General Armstead became general. It was written when General Armstead was a captain, plus it was yellowed with age. So this is an old letter. Now, I'm going to peruse the newspapers again before I decide to follow a lead. The reason I'm going to do that was I remember in the newspaper from the first case there was information about jewelry heists, and that might be relevant to this case. Well, it isn't relevant, but I found a letter from one of the public to the Times basically saying burglars should be flogged, police should be able to shoot burglars, that public should be educated on the legal use of firearms to protect themselves from burglaries. So I don't know if this is relevant, but I found the one thing I was looking for. that there was a daring daylight robbery, and this is the paper from March 12th, and we're doing June 11th, so this is nearly a month ago. There was a daring daylight robbery of it was a jeweler's, R.S. Gerard and Company Jewelers. Basically, a guy threw a smoke bomb in and yelled fire, and the employees all evacuated the store, and then the thief just made off with all the jewels. But right below it, though, is a story about Pierre Maton, international jewel thief, and I believe he was mentioned in our 27 Northwest lead. So that might be interesting to know about. Yes, Pierre Maton. So this is next to the manuscript that the general is writing. The general is writing about a famous jewel belonging to Napoleon and Napoleon's brother. It traces its ownership from Napoleon's brother up to a Russian Count Rostov. Next to the manuscript is a letter from Pierre Maton. It simply states that he is prepared to divulge the name of the present owner of the gem for agreed-upon fee. Information and money are to be traded at the Bridge House Hotel at 10 a.m. on the 12th. But on March 12th, sorry, and I said nearly a month ago, but it's nearly 2 months ago. Okay. The body of Pierre Maton, suspected international jewel thief, was found earlier yesterday, so this was on March 11th he was found, floating in the Thames. He had apparently been strangled to death. Although Maton, a citizen of France, had been detained by authorities in many countries in connection with various thefts over the years, he had never been convicted of any crime. The police have no suspects at this time, but report that the murderer must be powerfully built, as the physical evidence indicates the victim was strangled with bare hands. So, is the letter on the general's desk several months old? Or is it someone pretending to be Pierre Maton? Can we find out more about Pierre Maton in the more current newspaper from Monday, June 11th? I don't know if this is relevant, but this is about the Duke of Wellington who's been mentioned from Waterloo. So this is Duke of Wellington's birthday to the editor of the Times. Sir, I have today deposited at the military expedition at Chelsea a most valuable piece of evidence as to the birthplace of the great Duke of Wellington. His census paper of 1851, the first line written by his own hand. In it he states he was born in Ireland, he believes in Athy. The document was given to me and my sister as a great treasure by our friend Major G. Graham, the late Registrar General. I trust that it will end all controversy on this matter. C.J. Palmer, 33rd, Portman Square, Northwest. Controversy about the Duke of Wellington's birthplace? So from perusing the newspapers, I found out two pieces of information. One is that Pierre Maton is dead nearly 2 months before the general died, which means this letter is either old or it's from an imposter. The letter that Pierre Maton wrote him about knowing where the current owner of this jewel is. Pierre Maton is implicated to be a jewel thief, but never been charged, never been convicted of it. The second, and Pierre Maton was strangled to death by someone who could basically physically overpower him. So once again, not an old man. Um, the second thing of relevance is, and I don't know how relevant it is, but it's that the general, the Duke of Wellington, there's some controversy over his birthplace. Someone wrote in with a census paper he signed, the Duke of Wellington signed himself, saying he's born in Ireland, and it doesn't really elaborate on what the controversy may be. So I don't know how relevant the second thing is. The first thing feels very relevant, that Pierre Maton is dead. So this letter is either 2 months old, or it's from an imposter. Yeah. So whoever killed the general also turned the Duke of Wellington's figure around as if he's retreating instead of charging forward. So once again, there's the two worlds I'm building. So in one, Senate is the murderer. The whole thing about the old man with cane is made up. Senate killed the general with the one rapier that's been removed from the wall. Is Senate short? Okay, we don't know that Senate is short, but he describes the visitor, the unknown visitor, as short. And whoever got the sword off the wall had to push a chair against the wall and stand on it to get the rapier. So that's a point towards either Senate set up the chair to frame the short man, or the short man actually existed, and he's the one that used the rapier. But then, why would he? Why was there sounds of swordplay? Unless once again Senate is making this up. Because if there's sounds of swordplay but only one sword has been used, so I'm assuming if this man is real that he has his own sword in his cane. But then if he's the only one who's short, why did they need to push the chair up against the wall to grab the rapier off the wall? Why would he grab a rapier to arm his enemy? Yeah, this isn't adding up. This isn't adding up at all. But I need more information. Okay, so I have several lines here. I could go to the French embassy to talk to Gerard, who's an old friend of the general's. I could go talk to Lord Fitch, who's the general's brother-in-law, and they were in business together. So here's the thing. I think I'm supposed to pick up on that the man was French, but it was a French accent that Senate didn't recognize. That implies to me that he's faking a French accent. The fact that he was able to get out without being seen means that he's probably a young man disguised as an old man, and climbed the garden wall. I think we're going to talk to Lord Fitch, not Gerard. So Lord Fitch is the brother-in-law of the general. So the brother of the general's wife. The general married out of convenience, not out of love. So let's see if we can't find Lord Fitch in our directory. Okay, so we have a Lord Malcolm Fitch at 39 Southwest. So Southwest is here. Southeast is on this side of the Thames. Southwest. Southwest 39. Okay, that is right here, so not far from the murder scene. And before I check that out, I'm just going to go look at 27 Northwest again. And the reason I'm going to do that is I want to see when Lord Fitch is supposed to visit. Yeah, Lord Fitch was supposed to visit this morning but never arrived. That makes him very suspicious. If he isn't being framed by Sennett, and if Sennett isn't the murderer. I don't have a motive for Sennett. All I have is that there's no way this person could have gotten past him without seeing him, because the one door was locked and he from the inside and he was going through the other door. So Sennett is either an accomplice or this guy climbed over the garden wall. I think those are the only options. So yeah, Lord Fitch was supposed to visit this morning, so let's see Lord Fitch at 39 Southwest. And something I learned from the first case is you kind of want a nice long entry, otherwise you might be on the wrong track. And this entry is not that long at all, so I don't know if this is where I'm supposed to be going. I admit to having had a strong dislike for Armstead, says Lord Fitch. Motive? He was a cad and a bounder who made my sister's life miserable. I argued at length with my father against the marriage, but to no avail. Unfortunately, Mary was not the attractive sort who had suitors by the score. Far from it. She was in real danger, as my father put it, of advancing rapidly into spinsterhood unless he did something about it. And so their engagement was arranged just before Armistead was sent on a military mission to France. During that year, I continued to argue against the marriage. I had made several friends on my tour of the continent, and I had asked them to forward any information they might have on Armistead's unsavory activities. They regularly sent back word of his riotous living, his drinking and womanizing and such. Finally, there was some scandal or other involving a young French girl of good family. But even with this documentation, my father would not dissolve the betrothal. I even went so far as to give the story to the newspapers, hoping to create an untenable situation for everyone involved. But my father got wind of it and used his influence to stop the publication. You must understand, I consider that whatever hurt I was doing my sister in the publishing of such a scandal was the lesser of evils in the long run. At the time, I was sure the marriage was a mistake, and so it proved to be. May we ask why you did not keep your appointment with the general this morning? My wife took suddenly ill. I summoned Dr. Ainstree and waited until his arrival at around 10 o'clock. Okay, so we're going to compare that to the time of death. $10 o'clock. Okay, so he's saying he waited for the doctor here until 10 o'clock. The murder happened at 10 o'clock. So this is 15 minutes. We're probably, somewhat longer. Sorry about bumping the microphone. Yeah. We're probably right within the 15-minute travel range there, give or take 5 to 10 minutes. So if he was here at 10 o'clock, he couldn't have been here. Yeah, so the murder was at 10. So the question is, do I need to check that with the doctor? By the way, that's my second lead. And I just realized I don't know what happened to my notepad. Oh, there it is. Yeah. That's my second lead, was 39 Southwest. Now I need to think about it and a third lead. So Lord Fitch has a grudge against Armstead, but what does killing him now accomplish? We also know that General Armstead was not necessarily faithful to his wife, but that lines it up to being a marriage of convenience rather than a marriage of love. Doesn't make him a good guy, but it definitely aligns with that. That being said, I'm not sure how long the deceased wife has been deceased. Why would Lord Fitch be out for revenge now? He just, if he wanted revenge, he would have taken it years ago, right? What would have changed that would make him want revenge now? We could check his alibi, but I feel like I need more on him before I worry about his alibi, and we can come back to that. It's not like we need to go through the leads to get back there, because we're allowed to re-review any lead we've seen. So I think I want to check up the other suspect would be this Gerard fellow, this French friend. So let's review that again. The general was to meet with an old friend, Jean-Paul Girard, at the French embassy at 1 p.m. on the day of the murder. So that might be relevant because the murderer may have been trying to prevent that meeting. So let's think about this. I think that is the lead I want to follow, Jean-Paul Girard. Now, I could either go to the French embassy, or I could look up that name directly. And let's look up both and decide which one I'm going to. So, Girard. Okay, so Girard isn't listed by name, so I'm going to go to the French embassy. So I'm going to go closer to the back of the book, where different types of businesses and stuff are listed, and there is a list of embassies. The French embassy is 59 Southwest, which is right here, which you'll note is even closer to the site of the murder. So both of these are fairly close to the site of the murder, so I'm not ruling either of these men out right now. So 59 Southwest. 59 Southwest. This is a nice long entry, so I think we're on the right track. Or at least we're going to get a decent amount of information out of it. And there's this nice picture of, I think that's my image of what Watson looks like, but it might be Wiggins, the leader of the Baker Street Irregulars, or we might be yeah, anyways. But 59 Southwest, this is what I'm interested in. A sprightly, silver-haired gentleman meets us in the embassy waiting room and introduces himself as Jean-Paul Girard. He leads us to a small office where we can have our conversation in privacy. Monsieur, we begin. You knew General Armstead from his tour of duty at the École Militaire, did you not? Yes, the general, he was but a captain at the time. The letter was addressed to Captain. Clue? Captain Armstead. The general, he was but a captain at the time, was one of a group of English officers sent to our war college. We, in turn, sent a number of French officers to your war college in Sandhurst. I was assigned to be the general's guide, as it were, during his stay. We were quartered together and were constantly in each other's company for an entire year. In such a situation, people emerge as either the worst of enemies or the best of friends. Happily, the latter was true in our case. Would you describe the general as he was at that time? The general was quite a dashing fellow. I would say that when on duty there was no more dedicated officer in the English army. His knowledge of military history was astounding. But off duty, well, that was another matter entirely. He breaks into a broad grin. I'm afraid the general was quite a devotee of wine, women, and song, although not by any means in that order. I was quite amazed at, shall we say, his stamina. I, a Frenchman, could not keep up with him. When I complained that he was putting me and my countrymen to shame in matters of love, he laughed and said that it was because we did not have a horse face to spur us on. You see, just before the general left England, he had become engaged to a Mary Fitch, later Mrs. Armstead. On her he had conferred the unfortunate sobriquet, Horseface. It was a marriage of convenience only. It would provide the general with social position and a significant increase in wealth. He looked on his stay in France as a last fling before the marriage knot was tied around his neck, was the way he phrased it. So there was no particular woman in the general's life at that time? Curiously, there was someone, although I never learned her name. My little flower, he called her. I remember one morning, actually, it was in the middle of the night near the end of his tour of duty, when the general awakened me. It was obvious that he had not been to bed, and he was slightly inebriated. He wanted me to rise and sortie with him out into the country. I told him to get some sleep. Morning call was only an hour or so away. With my rebuff, he settled down on his bed, rambled on somewhat cryptically about the promises that must be kept and promises that couldn't be. Finally, he slumped back on bed and sighed. My little flower. I shall never forget the depth of that sigh. Ma Fleurette, he said. Have you seen the general often over the years? No, not at all, in fact. Our friendship has been entirely maintained by correspondence, letters. Last week, when I arrived in London, we had supper at Roule's, and then went to see the French actor Philippe Arnaud perform. The general commented that my presence next to him while French was being spoken from the stage reminded him of the old days. We even went backstage after the performance to meet some of the actors. It was, in fact, the first time in almost 40 years that we had actually been in each other's presence. Your visit went well? Oh, exceedingly. The general was in excellent spirits. Was there anything in particular on his mind? Did he seem worried? No, not at all. He joked at length about the upcoming tontine celebration at Langham. Alas, he even predicted that he would certainly outlast the other ticket holders and win. He was very enthusiastic about the new information concerning the polar star. He was to meet someone this week, a countryman of mine, if I'm not mistaken, who was to give him that information. If anything, he was looking forward to the meeting. What business did his appointment with you this afternoon involve? The business of two old friends simply getting together to dine and chat. It is hard for me to believe that my good friend is gone. Okay, so there's an unknown other woman who may be important. Okay. By the way, I need to mark down 59 Southwest as a lead followed. So, once again, he was supposed to be meeting what's the name? 27 Northwest. Uh, he was supposed to be meeting Pierre Maton, but Pierre Maton has been dead for over 2 months, so who was he supposed to be meeting? There's something going on about the Duke of Wellington, some dislike by the murderer. This letter is quite possible to be from Jean-Paul Girard, but it's an old letter. It's a very old letter. Okay, so I did find one thing that might be relevant in the newspaper. Entertainments, Princess Theater, French plays, sole manager Mr. Eric Idler, the 22nd season of French plays now underway. The entire company, 40 in number, of the Compagnie Arnaud, Paris, appears at this theater in the two great successes of the year, Vive l'Empereur and Paris fin de siècle. Box office open daily from 10 to 5. So that gives credence to the story that Gerard and him went to see some plays, especially starring Arnaud. So Lord Vitch seems to be a better suspect right now than what's his name, Jean-Paul Girard. Yeah, because Lord Vitch actually has some animosity. Once again, it's curious why he waited so long to take revenge. Jean-Paul Girard is French, which matches the accent, but he's sprightly, so he doesn't walk with a cane unless the cane is a cane sword, which I suspect could be the case. But that still doesn't really match the that doesn't match the description of Jean-Paul. And Jean-Paul doesn't seem to have much of a motive. Could my little flower be referring to the gem? Actually, I'm gonna check obituaries quick, because I want to see if there's a possibility that this was done by the last surviving member of the lottery. Like, maybe it had come down to him. There isn't a report under the death section of either newspapers of any of these other lottery winners. So, not lottery winners, but participants in this basically this lottery for the survivors of Waterloo. Basically, it goes to the final survivor. And that might be a motive, except I don't see any indication any of the others have been killed. So this feels more personal. It could be someone's trying to frame Jean-Paul Girard, So I think the best thing I can do is check Lord Fitch's alibi, because that's really the only information I have right now. By the way, this lottery that's up for grabs is over £1 million with interest, and that is in the 1800s. That is frankly a ridiculous amount of money. That's probably, I don't know what the inflation would be, but I have a feeling that would be closing in on trillionaire levels of wealth. I would want to check into that, but that is, I feel like the people who wrote this didn't really take inflation into account. They just put in a big number. Okay. The general had new information on the gem, but the new information could not have been coming from who he thought it was. The new information was coming from someone who's been dead for 2 months. So, I don't know what that line of inquiry is about. So, once again, I'm going to check Lord Fitch's alibi. I think that's the only thing I can do. Dr. Ainstree. He summoned Dr. Ainstree and waited till 10 o'clock this morning. So I'm going to look up Dr. Ainstree, and this may be a dead end, but I don't know where else to go at this point. Nope, that's the instruction manual, not the directory. So here's the directory, Ainstree. Ainstree, Dr. A. 24 Northwest. So we're staying right in the region of the murder here. So just to be clear, Lord Fitch's house, French embassy, murder scene, Dr. Ainstree. So no one's crossing the whole city this morning to get to where they might need to be. Which the first case, kind of like all of the leads I followed, were kind of spread out across the whole map, but I followed 15, so a lot of those I shouldn't have followed. But yeah, 24 Northwest, that's what I'm looking for. I should have looked for his actual business practice, because this is his residence. So that's a wasted lead, because now I'm going to need to go to, so 24 Northwest was a wasted lead because it's his residence. At Dr. Ainstree's residence, we find the door closed. A plaque indicates Dr. Ainstree consultations from Tuesday to Saturday at 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 32 Great Wild Street, West Central. So I can confirm that by looking at West Central 32. Yep, it's Great Wild Street. But I can also, so 32 Great Wild Street is there, but it's right on the border, so it won't stay there perfectly. But I can also confirm that in the directory by looking up doctors. Yep, 32 West Central. So if I'd looked up doctors instead of looking up his name, I would have gotten there directly. So let's go to 32 West Central. That's East Central, West Central, 32. Well, I've got bad news, or good news. Lord Fitch's alibi checks out. He received the message about the sick wife from Lord Fitch at 9. He arrived at 10 or so, and Lord Fitch met him at the door. Okay, so here's the thing. I could go to the Bridge House Hotel, where he was supposed to meet Pierre Maton. I don't know what good that would do because it's a day early. So I'm not sure if that's the way I need to go. I've investigated Jean-Paul Girard. I wonder if I can find anything on David Sennett. This is probably a waste of lead because we already know he's at the general's home, but maybe we can find his own residence and investigate there. This is a long shot, but David Sennett is my only. If Lord Fitch didn't do it, Pierre might have done it, but we have no explanation of a carpet bag, cape, and cane for Pierre. And everything points to the whole thing being a disguise. It's very theatrical. Maybe it has something to do with the play, because if it is that theatrical, maybe that's what I'm supposed to hone in on. But let's check out David Sennett first. It just directs us back to the crime scene, so that's not a lead worth following. So we found out everything we can about David Sennett. It even says David Sennett, his eyes are red from weeping. So I don't think it's him, because he does seem to be upset over the general's death. Figure of Wellington is turned around. That seems to be important. In fact, the name of the case is the Tin Soldier, so the figure of Lord Wellington turned around, that's an important clue. I'm gonna look at the paper again because I think that's what I have to. Yep, so I'm gonna read this. I don't think I read it before. The Duke of Wellington's birthplace. Sir, I have today deposited at the military exhibition at Chelsea a most valuable piece of evidence as to the birthplace of the great Duke of Wellington. His census paper of 1851, the first line written by his own hand. In it, he states he was born in Ireland, he believes at Athy. This document was given to me and my sister as a great treasure by our friend Major G. Graham, the late Registrar General. I trust it will end all controversy on this matter. Faithfully yours, C.G. Palmer. Now, I'm going to check who the Waterloo survivors are. If C.G. Palmer is one of them, then that's a lead worth following. Um, C.G. Palmer is not one of them. It still might be a lead worth following because I don't have anything else to go on at this point. It's funny because in the previous one, which obviously you guys haven't seen, I had so many leads I was bouncing from lead to lead to lead and collecting information after information after information. In this one, it seems like leads are few and far between. So the two kind of options I want to pursue right now is I could pursue this issue about Duke of Wellington. The soldier turned around. Wellington turned around, makes it seem like this does have something to do with the Battle of Waterloo more than anything else going on. So there's some sort of controversy about the Duke of Wellington's birthplace. But what does this have to do with the murder? That's the connection I'm not getting. The other possibility is trying to follow up on this polar star, but I don't have anything there except for the hotel he was supposed to meet a dead guy at. And we don't know anything about that except that he was rewriting the book on it. And what does that have to do with the letter? So we're clearing David Sennett. So maybe I need to pursue the theater angle. Either way, I've probably used a lot more leads than Sherlock Holmes based on my previous case where Sherlock Holmes only followed 4 leads. I'm already at 5. I don't know. I don't think I'll be able to beat Sherlock Holmes. And it's supposed to be hard, so. What's the key piece of evidence? The book is titled The Tin Soldier. And whoever broke in purposely turned the Tin Soldier, Duke of Wellington, around almost as if calling him a coward. And our attention was drawn to that, specifically telling David Sennett not to touch it. The old man is a young man who went over the garden wall. Someone was short enough that they needed to use a chair to grab the rapier. The man described by David Sennett is short. Lord Fitch has an alibi, and it's pretty ironclad. Jean-Paul Girard isn't described as short. He does have a French accent. He's sprightly. He doesn't walk with a cane. But once again, that may not be necessary because whoever went in went out over the garden wall, most likely. Is it the theater? It has to be the theater. At Princess Theater. That's the line of inquiry we're taking. We're going to go to the Princess Theater. I imagine this is a somewhat theatrical thing. French accent wasn't recognized. There's a French play going on. He and Jean-Paul Girard went backstage Is it perhaps his spurned lover from France, disguised as a man, with an old envelope? Perhaps an illegitimate son? I am spinning wild theories here. So the French plays were at the Princess Theater. That's 11 Northwest. The other thing is, I could look up Arnaud specifically, see if there's an Arnaud in the book. There isn't an Arnaud in the book, so my best guess would be the Princess Theater then. 11 Northwest. Right there. Brilliant. We have a good solid block of information, maybe 3/4 of a page worth here. So from here to here. Yeah, so that's more than I was expecting on this lead, so I have some hope. I'm writing that down as my 6th lead. We arrive at the Princess Theater where Vive l'Empereur, a biographical play on the life of Napoleon, and the reason I emphasize that is Napoleon, this polar gem, is connected to Napoleon. It was given to his brother, then passed down through Russia, through some Russian. On the life of Napoleon is being performed by the French company Arnaud. The play has been a great success during its limited engagement in London, and there is a long line of people trying to obtain tickets for the last 2 performances before the company returns to France. We make our way backstage to meet the company manager, Jervis Arnaud, a founder of the troupe. He is a short, stout man in his mid-50s, given to short, stout, but not old, mid-50s. He's a short, stout man in his mid-50s, given to extravagant gestures to express a passionate personality. He is very proud of Philip, his nephew. We're giving credence to the illegitimate child. What if Philip is an illegitimate child through Jervis Arnaud's sister? He is very proud of Philip, his nephew, the leading actor. He fairly bubbles over in praise of his ability. But you must see Philip perform. He is a magician, a wonder. The breadth of his talent is truly magnifique. He manages to portray the Emperor Napoleon from the age of 26 to his last days on the island of St. Helena. You would swear 5 different actors play the part, but no, it's only Philip, aging before your eyes. As he speaks, he leads us down the corridor to Philip's dressing room. Of course, years of training and practice go into the making of such an artist, but at age 48, Philip is the toast of the continent. Monsieur Arnaud is 48, and you are his uncle? Ha ha, I am but 8 years older than Philip, but I assure you that I am his uncle. It seems that the Arnaud family has a history of late arrivals. Philip's father was 23 years older than myself and Philip's poor sister. He points to the picture of a young woman. Philip's father was 23 years older than myself, and Philip's poor sister, he points to the picture of a young woman, was 11 years older than he. Next to the portrait of the sister is another of an older woman. Each has a black ribbon draped diagonally across its top right-hand corner. Yes, they are both dead. The sister many, many years ago under very tragic circumstances. Philip's mother had to be put into an asylum. She just couldn't accept her daughter's death. We received word from the asylum only last week that she too had passed away. Motive: the mother has passed away. It upset Philip very much, resurrected old ghost you might say, and his performance suffered, but he recovered completely. I have never seen him more brilliant than he was last night. You must see him perform, you must. In fact, if you will wait here, I will arrange for tickets. Can you tell us where Philip Arnaud was this morning? Monsieur Arnaud gives us a puzzled look but answers. He was at the National Gallery. Why do you ask? Just then, two workmen carry a trunk into the dressing room. Monsieur Arnaud throws his hands in the air and exclaims, "No, no, mes amis. The trunk should go to the company lodgings at the Grand Hotel." Grand Hotel? He turns back to us and shrugs as if to say, "What is one to do? Wait, and I will get the tickets." During the entire interview, we never stated our purpose. Feeling somewhat guilty, we obtained the information under false pretenses. We decide that the better part of valor would be to leave before Monsieur Arnaud returns. I mean, you should take the tickets. Okay, so Philip was at the National Gallery, but that's not where he is now. And in fact, we know the company lodgings are in the Grand Hotel. So the Grand Hotel is our next one, I think. I'm locking it in. Philip is the murderer. Okay, here's why. General Armstead is Philip's father. The mother didn't take being left behind in France very well. Hang on, might not be... We need to do some math on the ages, because there's a difference in age between the sister. Might be the sister's father rather than Philip's father. Okay, Philip is 48. Okay, so let's look at the casebook. General Armstead is 74. So let's subtract 48. 26, right? Yeah, 26. So he would have been 26 when he was in France. Did Pierre tell us how old he was? No, but that tracks. Okay, I want to go back to the theater just to see what those ages were again. Okay, hang on. We got an exact age on Philip's father. So, what's going on here? Well, no, we don't. Because Jervis Arnaud is in his mid-50s. And we know that Philip's father was 23 years older than him. So that puts him in his mid to late 70s. I mean, it's doable if he's not in his mid-50s, but in his... It's doable if Philip's uncle is in his mid-50s. The sister died many, many years ago under very tragic circumstances. Philip's mother couldn't take it and was put into an asylum. I need more information, but I think what lines up with everything is that General Armstead is Philip Arnaud's father. Philip Arnaud was very theatrical. He was made up as an old man, which we know his acting ability allows him to, with a cane and a carpet bag, and a black cape. That's all very theatrical. So that was Philip Arnaud who visited. He got in. He attacked him, probably used... Philip is probably short because he can play Napoleon, and Napoleon is famous for being short. Historically, that may not actually be the case, but that's the perception, and this may be going off of public perception rather than actual facts. So, if he's not using the cane sword, why did he get the sword off the wall? Why did he use the chair to push against the wall? And why was there sounds of swordplay? There were two swords. Maybe Philip Arnaud put his own sword back, but he wouldn't have had time, because when the glass shattered, that's when Senate ran around the back, so Arnaud wouldn't have had time to put the sword back. Did he get the sword out and challenge General Armstead to a duel? That might be what happened. That does kind of work, but I think we need to go to the Grand Hotel to get more information. So hotels. This is tricky. Okay. Very tricky. We have actually two possible options, the Grand Hotel and Midland Grand Hotel. I think I'm just going to go straight to the Grand Hotel and hope it's not a red herring. So the Grand Hotel is 22 West Central. Over here. Once again, we're staying pretty tight in around the murder scene. We haven't really gone over to this side of the map at all. Yeah. So 22 West Central. Only after persuading him that we are on an important business from Scotland Yard will the manager of the Grand Hotel allow us to search Philip Arnaud's room. Once there, we readily find the cane. Cunningly wrought into the handle is its button, which, when released, separates the handle from the cane. A sword, attached to the handle, slips neatly into the cane sheath. After a few moments more, we discover a yellowed envelope addressed to Captain Armstead, 12th Hussars. The letter inside reads, Mon bien-ami. It's in French, and I don't understand French. But it's signed Florette, which we know is the name of the girl General Armstead was in love with in France. Wiggins translates the letter. Dearest, I cannot bear the pain any longer. I hated you when you left me, but the child, our child, eased the hurt and softened the heart. Now my baby is dead, an innocent sufferer for our sins. I have nothing. I am nothing. I cannot bear the pain. I love you. I love you still. Florette. So, it's the sister. It's Philip's sister who's dead and his mother. So I think we pretty much cracked it. So it's clearly Philip. He used the cane sword. He probably challenged him to a duel of some kind, and that's why he got the sword off the wall by pushing the chair against it. He used his carpet bag, something in his carpet bag to get over the garden wall. 11, what is it, 11 southwest? No, 11 northwest. We don't have any indication of what he used to get over the garden wall. We don't. We do not. But he had to have used something, and he probably took the sword off the wall after challenging Armstead to a duel, and Armstead probably agreed to it out of some form of guilt. Okay. I don't think we need to check Philip's alibi. We've got the murder weapon. We've got the motive. But I do need to check those ages. So here's what's not adding up. The sister, if she had lived, would be 59. Armstead is 74. That means he's only 14, and that doesn't add up. Yeah, there's no way, even back then, that he's the father of Philip's sister at age 14. That math doesn't add up. Am I doing the math right? Yeah, I am. 15. 15 would have been his age. But 26 to Father Philip. Now let's look at this letter. So everything in the letter indicates that General Armstead is the father of Philip's sister, but he would have had to been 15 when she was conceived. Would a 15-year-old be over at military academy exchange program? I mean, technically possible, but unlikely. Whereas he would have been 26 to father Philip himself. I'm ready to stop following leads and lock in my answers, but I just know they're going to ask about this, and I'm hoping there's a math error in here. Okay, so we have a date for when the general was sent to France, and that was in 48. So the year is currently 1888. So that would have been 40 years prior. And General Armstead is 74. So he would have been 34 in France. The math isn't mathing. It really isn't mathing. Unless I'm doing the math wrong. Okay. In 1888, okay, we're going to write this out because this isn't adding up, and this is the key to the whole thing. Okay, in 1888, General Armstead is 74. In 48, he was sent to France. So 40 years prior. And I did read that correctly, right? Okay. Yes. So in 48, General Armstead is in France at the age of 34. Philip is currently 48. That makes Philip only 26 years younger. Philip is only 26 years younger than General Armstead, so General Armstead cannot have fathered him in France. How long were they in France? Okay, here's the issue I'm running into. Everything lines up for it to be Philip, except the ages are wrong. So we have the letter from Florette, Philip's mother. We have the letter indicating that the baby is Philip's sister, who's 11 years older than himself. But Philip is only 26 years younger than... Yeah, this is bizarre. This is really bizarre. Because everything makes sense except their ages. And I can't imagine that they published this game with a mistake of that magnitude. So I think that has to be intentional, but he has the sword cane, he has the letter. Where did that come from? Now, it's possible that Philip believes him to be his father and his sister's father, but that it definitely... General Armstead would have only been 14 when his sister was conceived, and the letter clearly indicates that it's the sister. and the sister passed away. Lorette. Philip is being framed, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it, because otherwise there's no way to make sense of those ages. But framed by who? The only other lead I have is the question of the Duke of Wellington. I was ready to lock it in as Philip, but I did the math on the ages, and even in my head I couldn't get it to add up, and so I actually wrote it out, and it still doesn't add up. I am going to go see C.G. Palmer, who had a question about the Duke of Wellington's birth date, sent it to the paper. This is probably completely irrelevant. Where is C.G. Palmer at? 33 Portman Square Northwest. Okay, so please don't be a dead end. Please don't be a dead end. 33 Northwest. Here we go. Chester Palmer is a thin man of roughly 60-odd years, but whose eyes gleam with an unbridled energy. When we let him know that we're visiting him regarding his article in today's Times, a hint of wariness clouds his face. You're not from the Armstead Foundation, I hope, because if that's the case, you can get out of here this instant. The paper I've submitted is authentic. My sister Laura and myself have kept it carefully until today. The Armstead Foundation? No, we're investigating the murder of General Armstead himself. Did you know? I've never met the general himself, but I've recently had to deal with the so-called historians who lead his foundation. During a conference last month, they claimed the Duke of Wellington was born in Dublin and mocked me when I dared claim otherwise. They're in a tight spot. I just don't like the way the ages don't add up. I don't like the way the ages don't add up, and that it doesn't make any sense. And so there has to be another solution, but this... Where's the Armstead Foundation? I hate to do this, but we're gonna go get a hint. And we're gonna do that by going to Sherlock Holmes himself. 42 Northwest. And you're allowed to do this, but it will be following a lead, I believe. And it does come with the risk of spoiling something. But I am stumped. So I guess I'll read until I get enough of a hint to find the next thing. This is a most peculiar case, Holmes tells us as we sit down on the comfortable sofa of the living room. Did the killer come to kill General Armstead, or was the murder caused by an argument gone wrong? In the first case, the murderer would have needed to be armed as he came in. A cane can easily hide a sword. Yep, figured that out. But would an old man choose a weapon against a still vigorous general? There's something to look into, don't you think, Wiggins? And in the case of the argument, it would have been a quiet argument if you could call it that. Senate hadn't heard shouts or screams before the sound of swords. Yeah, so it doesn't give me anything we haven't found already. But what about the motive, the taunting, or the book? If we keep the visitor's description given by Senate, we could think of a participant of the taunting who would want to speed up its conclusion, but why the devil would he have a French accent? It doesn't fit. There remains the lead of the Polar Star. I don't know what to think about it. A visit to the General's residence would surely reveal interesting information, don't you think, Wiggins? Assuredly, Mr. Holmes. Yep, so that did not help at all, because basically I've discovered everything they're hinting at. I'm going back to the theater, not the theater, I'm going back to Pierre. Or, yeah, is that his name? No, Jean-Paul Girard. Jean-Paul Girard, which was 59 Southwest. Okay. I'm going to follow up on the Polar Star because that's the very last thing I can think of, and there's got to be something that makes these ages make sense. So, so it was just last week that they went to see Philip Arnaud, went backstage, met them. So he met some of the actors backstage last week. And then let's look at the theater, which is 11 Northwest. Philip just found out last week that his mother died, but he didn't confront General Armstead backstage. Yeah, so the Polar Star is the last thing, so I want the fake Pierre. 27 Northwest. Bridge House Hotel. I need to go to the Bridge House Hotel. That's the last lead I have, so with the ages not adding up, that's the only thing I can think of. Bridge House is 3 southeast, so we're getting over here for the first time ever. All the way over here. So that's where he was supposed to meet Pierre Mayton, who is already dead. Could this be a plot by Philip? Maybe. So 3 southeast. I need to write that down. a nice long one. There's quite a hubbub in progress as we entered the Bridge House Hotel. From the murmurings of the crowd in the lobby, we quickly gather that a murder has been committed. Hang on. Another murder. We recognize Constable Shook at the foot of the main staircase and advance towards it. How in the world did you hear about it? The body was found only 10 minutes ago. We explained that we just happened to be at the hotel on another errand to see a Pierre Maton. Why, that's the very fellow what's done in. We ask him to let us pass, and he does so, albeit reluctantly. Second floor, he calls after us. Hey, you! Who said anything about you? Back you, and none of your lip. We make our way through another crowd gathered on the second floor to talk to the policeman at the doorway of room 226. Our luck holds, for Wiggins is acquainted with the officer, and he lets us enter. We arrive in time to overhear a third officer interrogating the desk clerk. He checked into the hotel on the 8th. He was French. This morning, he brought down 2 letters to be posted. The proximity of the body is clearly making him nervous. Letters to who? I don't know, but he pointed to them and asked where Brick Street and Pont Street were in relation to the hotel. Who found the body? I did. I came to deliver a wire. The constable picks up a telegram lying on the desk. Is this the wire? At the clerk's nod in the affirmative, the constable scowls at the message. It says here, information still valuable. See me. Clive Dornan, Norgate and Company, Publishers. What information would that be? I have no idea. Did you see anyone suspicious hanging about? Yes, sir. Well, no. I mean, a very large man asked for Mr. Maton several hours ago. I told him he was in and to go right up. Oh, did you now? Well, yes. He was very well dressed and well-mannered, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. It wasn't long before the man came down. He was almost running. I saw him go out the front door and hail a cab. A large man, huh? Well, from the looks of it, this one was strangled and with bare hands. The constable dismisses the clerk and takes a long look at the body of Pierre Maton. Too bad the murderer didn't get more of his foot in it, he says, pointing to the overturned inkwell on the floor. The culprit had evidently stepped in the ink, but only with the toe of one foot. The tracks as they are grow fainter as the murderer neared the door and disappear altogether at the threshold. What's this? Says the constable, rummaging through the dead man's belongings. He shows a passport in the name of Andre Maton. Okay, so this Pierre Maton, who's actually Andre Maton, has also been strangled. And Pierre Maton was killed also strangled by a large man 2 months ago. Norgate and Company, Publishers. Is that the publishers of... Is that the publishers of Colonel Armstead's book? Or General Armstead? Norgate and Company. Yes. Yes. So. We've got 2 murders now. I think it's time to go to Norgate and Company. Norgate and Company is at 41 West Central. Right there. Clive Dornan at Norgate and Company tells us about the General Armstead's revision of Treasures of the Conquerors. In March, we received a letter from Pierre Maton from Paris addressed to the General. We forwarded it to him. 2 days later, the General came to tell us that the author of the letter knew the whereabouts of the Polar Star, a remarkable diamond that once belonged to Joseph Bonaparte, Napoleon's brother. He believed that the information was genuine because the letter contained a detailed description of how the gem was stolen from its last known owner, Count Rostov in Russia, a Russian. It also contained details of the time and place of its sale to its present owner, who actually commissioned the theft, an Englishman. The General was very anxious to include the chapter on the diamond in a revised edition of his book. The only reason such a chapter had been omitted from the first edition was for want of that final bit of information. For our part, we were very anxious to publish such a revised edition. The original publication caused quite a stir among the public. You see, many of the treasures were in fact reconquered by their present owners by whatever means available, fair or foul. Many of them had secrets to hide. The revelation of those secrets created quite a sensation. The more libel suits were pressed against us, the more the book sold. Knowing that our revelations about the Polar Star will create a scandal, we immediately proceeded with the announcement of the upcoming book release in the Times. As soon as we did, letters began pouring in, some simply rejoicing at the news, some reserving copies, and some anonymous, of course, forecasting doom for the General should the book be released. Was there any pattern to those letters? Did they appear to have come from any one person? No, although we never saved any to compare them, we simply burned them as they came in. Had you any contact with Pierre Maton? I knew that he was in town to meet the General. I have a draft for the £5,000 ready. When I learned of the General's death, I wired Monsieur Maton with this that his information is still valuable to us. Okay. But it wasn't Pierre, it was Andre. Okay, so I don't have the new books, actually. Norgate and Company announced to be published this summer, new edition, enlarged and revised, Treasures of the Conquerors by General Farnsworth Armstead, with several new chapters, including one featuring the fabulous diamond, the Polar Star, 4/2, half-calf, gilt top, price $10.60. Okay, so there's the announcement, although that was the day of the murder, so they must have published the previous announcements. I need to figure out who this big man is, but that's not who would have... Something odd is going on here. Something very odd is going on, and I don't understand it because the ages don't make sense. Who is the, so where did I just go? That was 41 West Central. Okay. Count Rostov. If Count Rostov is in London, then he would be worth talking to because he's probably the one who strangled the Matons. So Rostov isn't in the directory. I could try to go to the Russian embassy, but it seems unlikely that's going to lead to anything. Oh, what the heck? What's one more lead? Embassies. '54 Southwest. All right, I'm checking it out just as the final thing, then I'm going to lock in my answer. So basically, at the Russian embassy, we get Count Rostov's arrived on the 8th and is staying at the Kaiser's Royal Hotel. So now we need to go to the Kaiser's Royal Hotel, which is 31 East Central. The Kaiser's Royal Hotel. At the Kaiser's Royal Hotel, we learned that a Russian gentleman, Count Rostov, and his man are staying in Suite 408. A quick trip in the lift sets us down on the 4th floor, and a short walk puts us to the Count's door. Our knock is answered by a tall, powerfully built man who shows us into the sitting room. There the Count sits, sipping tea. He is a frail old man who seems even more so as the giant takes his place by his side. "Are you from the police?" asked the Count in a surprisingly hearty voice. "Were you expecting the police?" "Yes, we are. Vladimir reported to me that his interview with Andrei Mayton, who is traveling under the name of his dead brother Pierre, was singularly unproductive as he was dead when Vladimir arrived. And Vladimir had nothing to do with his death. He assures me that he did not." "Why did he go see Andrei Mayton?" "It was in reference to a certain valuable possession of mine that was stolen some years ago by the brother Pierre. I was in Paris when I heard that General Armstead was to revise his very interesting book to include a chapter concerning that possession. I came to London to see him. In the course of events, I became aware that Andrei Mayton was also in London and realized that he was the general's source of knowledge. When the general was reported dead, I had no alternative but to see Mayton. I sent Vladimir, an old man's legs, to speak with him. Thank you, Count. You are most kind." Well, Vladimir is clearly the killer of the Maytons. I don't think there's any question about that at this point. I need to mark on that last hotel visit. Okay. I'm going to lock in my answer because I'm just spinning my wheels at this point. So I feel like the piece of information is available to me, but I'm just not getting it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go to the questions and let's answer them. Who killed General Armstead? My best guess is Pierre. Not Pierre. Arnaud. Philip Arnaud. Arnaud. Why was he murdered? Philip believed Armstead to be his father. No, to be his sister's father. Okay, Philip believed Armstead to be his sister's father and blames him for his mother's death. The ages don't line up on that, but that's what Philip believes based on the letter he has from his mother. The ages do not line up on that at all. So questions 3 and 4 are, why was the Duke of Wellington's figurine turned backwards? I have no idea. I haven't figured that out. I don't know what's going on with that. With what kind of a weapon was the general assassinated? Cane sword. And this is all going to be completely wrong because I've realized the ages don't line up, so all of this is the red herring, and we're going to figure out the real answer here in a minute. Okay. Who killed Pierre and Andrei Mayton? Vladimir. Why was Marshal Guilfoyle late to work? I don't even know who Marshal Guilfoyle is. Never mind why he's late to work. Who has the Polar Star? I'm gonna guess Count Rostov, as he's recovered it. Vladimir recovered it. To whom are the letters sent by Andre Mayton destined? Surely that's General Armstead. I hope. Alright. We're going to look at the solution, then we're going to add up our score. Alright, here we go. Well, we're all here and waiting. For the life of me, I cannot imagine how you cut to the truth of this case. Holmes puts aside the morning paper and begins. In this particular case, which might be titled The Case of the Tin Soldier, if you'll forgive my intrusion into your literary bailiwick, Watson, the most intriguing fact was the method of murder. The distinct sound of swordplay, reported Mr. Sennett. Most odd. It suggested to me an affair of honor. I thought so too. At General Armstead's home, my suspicions were confirmed. First, the letter. It was yellowed with age and addressed to the general by a rank he held some 40 years ago. It upset the general, indicating it concerned some long-past indiscretion. It was the reason for the duel. How can you be sure it was a duel? And I know the answer to this one. It was because his enemy, the short man, was the one who took the sword off the wall instead of just killing him. The general had time to retrieve a rapier hanging on the wall. The murderer allowed him to arm himself. A duel is the only event that fits with the facts. It is also interesting to note that the second rapier remained in place. The intruder came prepared. A sword came, yes. As to the intruder himself, Sennett described him as an old man, yet he left the premises over an 8-foot garden wall, a disguise, and carried off with enough expertise to completely fool Sennett. The carpet bag was used as a receptacle of the disguise when it was no longer needed. Then there was the clue left by the general himself. Mortally wounded, incapable of speech, at least incapable of producing a sound that would carry through the study door to Sennett, the general wanted to leave some clue. With his last ounce of strength, he smashed the diorama glass and turned the figure of Wellington in the opposite direction. The diorama depicted the Battle of Waterloo, said Watson. I would have thought that the tontine was involved. If that were so, Watson, the general need not have been so indirect. The tontine ticket was hanging in front of him. All he had to do was reach for it, and the message would have been clear. Based on an indiscretion out of the past, a letter addressed to Captain Armstead, the rank the general held at the time of his service in France, and the intruder's French accent as detected by Sennett, I concluded that an interview with Jean-Paul Girard at the French embassy might prove profitable. The picture painted by Monsieur Girard fit directly into the pattern. Having agreed to a marriage of convenience as a sacrifice to his career, the general lived a riotous life in France, a full, carefree life without any responsibility for exactly 1 year. A rather romantic notion, and what more romantic than a desperate and ill-fated love affair? Mr. Girard's mention of the actor Philip Arnoux struck a chord. Who better than an actor, a trained master of illusion, to disguise himself and perform in that disguise convincingly? Also, Philip Arnoux performs the role of Napoleon. According to M. Girard, the general had seen the play and gone backstage to meet Arnoux. When the general turned the figure of Wellington around, he was trying to tell us his killer was Napoleon, Wellington's opposite at the Battle of Waterloo, or rather the actor playing Napoleon, Philip Arnoux. At the Princess Theater, seeing the two portraits and hearing something of the woman's story suggested a reasonable scenario to fit the situation. Arnoux's sister was the Little Flower, a proper name, not a description by the way, sighed over by the general to Girard. She was an impressionable 19-year-old who fell madly in love with the dashing English captain. It was the sister, okay. When the captain's year came to an end, she despaired and took her own life. Her grief-stricken mother went mad and sent to an asylum. Thus, in the twinkling of an eye, Philip Arnault had lost a beloved sister and a loving mother. He was but 7 or 8 years of age, and while he desperately felt the double wound, he was too young to understand the circumstances that caused it. Some 40 years later, on the death of his mother, he received, by way of an inheritance, a letter written by his long-lost sister. She gave an explanation and a name, Armstead. He came to London, and fate dogged him. He had to restrain himself in front of the object of his anger that came to congratulate him in the dressing room, hatching his Machiavellian plot. Okay. Okay, yep, so I don't know where the clue was that it was the sister that was the love affair, because it really felt like the mother. I guess the ages are what would have led on that it was the mother, or that it was the sister. Yeah, that would have been the only thing that led that on. So the ages were supposed to tell me who, that it was the sister, not the mother. Yeah, 19-year-old. It mentions her age. In 48. Okay. So Holmes solved this case by following 4 leads. General Armstead in 27 Northwest, Jean-Paul Girard at the French Embassy, 59 Southwest, the Princess Theatre, and the Grand Hotel. He also used the following article in the newspaper, Princess Theatre. His score is 100 points. Alright, so I'm gonna score this. Okay, first series, number 1, Philip Arnault, who killed General Armstead. Philip Arnault, 30 points. Okay, I don't know if I should give myself points for the reason, because I was going for Philip's mother, not Philip's sister, so I think I don't get those 30 points. Why was the Duke of Wellington's figurine turned backwards? It was turned it around to point to his killer was the one who opposed Wellington at Waterloo, Napoleon. In this case, the actor was playing the role of Napoleon, Philip Arnault. So that's 30 points, I don't get that. And what kind of weapon? Sword cane, 10 points. So I score 40 points there. In the second series, who killed Pierre and Andre Matin? It was not Vladimir. Why was Marshal Guilfoyle late to work? I didn't answer that. Who has the polar star? No, I didn't get that correct. I can give myself probably half points for to whom were the letters, because one was to General Armstead. Yep. Okay. So I get 35 points. I followed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 leads, minus 4, 9 leads more than Holmes. So I lose 45 points from 35. Negative 10 is my score. And there you have it. That's the case of the Tin Soldier. Let me know if you like this one, and if you enjoyed my content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, because it really helps the videos get shown to more people. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.